Hello, hello, and welcome to MoneyGirl Live with Ella Reilly, everyone. Hello, Ella. How are you today?
Good, thanks, Mariam. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time. Look, this is a very important topic for us. We have hundreds and thousands of questions, but we only got you for 20 minutes, so we'll make the most of this time.
Sure.
So, Ella, first of all, I know you are the Associate Investment Director at Schroders. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So, Ella, tell us, what does that mean? What do you do, and what does Schroders do?
So maybe I'll start with what Schroders does. So we're a global investment manager. We're headquartered in London, and we manage assets and investments for institutional clients. So by that I mean it could be the big super funds or insurance companies that are out there, or some of the big banks. And then we also help manage investments for retail investors, which are kind of classified as, I guess your mums and dads of the world. And me, I work, as you said, as an associate investment director in our Sydney office. And I guess in my role, I essentially wear two hats at the moment. One hat has a focus on, the investment products that we offer to the market in fixed income. And then the other hat that I wear, is sustainability, really. As a company, Schroders, we really have a broad and well-regarded capability in sustainable investing. And I essentially represent that capability here for us here in Australia as a sustainability champion, so to speak. And I help disseminate the information that the London sustainability team send to us, and also work with our local teams to ensure that we're integrating ESG across all of our investment processes. To really ensure that we've got that sustainability lens across all that we do.
Okay, so quickly, Ella, what is ESG?
ESG. So by ESG, I'm talking about environmental, social, and governance. So environmental factors, that could broadly be climate change, deforestation, biodiversity, things like that. Social factors, that could be issues such as labour standards or nutrition, health and safety. And governance, it's really the way companies run themselves. So that include issues such as company strategy or remuneration policies or, board diversity.
Okay, so when you say you try to invest as a firm through an ESG lens, what does that mean?
I guess that's making sure that we are incorporating ESG into all of our thinking. So making sure that when we're looking at where to invest our clients' money, we're looking at it to make sure that these companies essentially have best practice when it comes to certain ESG risks. Because we really want to be investing responsibly for our clients, because we want to ensure them the best outcome. So we really need to make sure that we're looking at these investments in these companies, and they're looking at these risks and these factors in an appropriate way.
Right. Okay. So when you are assessing this, is there like a global standard best practice or ESG measure that you are comparing companies against?
Oh. um, Not really. I think it's hard to have a global standard across different asset classes, because different teams have different ways to approach what they're doing. They have a different philosophy. But essentially what we're trying to do is to make sure that there's a robust framework behind that philosophy and behind those processes that they're following when it comes to investing our clients' money, that they really are also focused on those ESG factors, and they're taking those into account. And they're taking those factors into account essentially when it comes to their investment decision making.
Okay. So then bringing that down to the individual level, at the company level, every company or every fund is defining ethical standards or ESG standards or guidelines. Um, how, as individuals, how do I assess what is or is not ethical investing?
Yeah, so that's a really good question because it's such a broad umbrella, and I don't think investors, there isn't really a clear definition for ethical investing, because it I think it gets muddied. So a lot of commentators and a lot of parts of the market might dump ethical, or might define ethical investment in line with socially responsible investment or impact investment or sustainable investing, and I think that's where a lot of us get so confused because we just don't have that clear definition. As a company, Schroders' approach to sustainability is really focused around assessing those ESG issues as they pose material risks to financial returns. Whereas ethical investing is really defined as um, it's more focused around actively investing or avoiding certain sectors or activities or certain companies because they're participating in activities that are against, or they don't align with your values or your morals or your ethics. So I think it's all about making sure you have that clear definition between, what people are defining as ethical investing. Um, so I guess one way to look at it, sustainable investing, I think sustainable investing takes into account, ESG integration within what they do, but it takes it a step further because then it takes things further by focusing on investing in those companies that are going to provide more sustainable returns, and that lead their sector when it comes to best practice in across a range of ESG issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can have screened investing where you negatively screen out certain sectors like tobacco. There's a lot of negative screens out there across the market for tobacco or nuclear weaponry or cluster munitions. And then ethical investing is an example where screening can be commonly used, but investors or investors such as yourselves, you want to screen things out that aren't really in line with what you believe in.
Right. Okay. So, Ella, is this really up to individual investors, or are funds really the middle person between the individual investor and other companies in terms of pushing towards more sustainable practices?
Um, Again, it comes down to what you define. So, where we manage money on behalf of our clients, we are active investors. So we're recognizing, that as active investors, we have that important part to play in shaping the future for all of our stakeholders, and helping to deliver those positive outcomes for clients. So I guess by active investor, what I mean by that, it means that we will actively participate in votings, in annual general meetings that companies have, where they need to, where there's a shareholder resolution. Say there's an issue that's come up, within certain companies and there's not enough board diversity. And so we're able to provide a voice for clients by voting on behalf of our clients in those forums. So when it comes to us as a company, we do act somewhat as a middleman, but we act as that voice for our clients, for investors such as yourselves to be present at those meetings and to be heard. I think also as active investors, we will engage with those companies if they're participating in certain practices or doing certain things or activities that we don't necessarily agree with. So again, we're trying to keep that conversation going to ensure that we're holding companies accountable for what they do on our investors' behalf.
And is that kind of how super funds and managed funds across the world operate? When we put our money, so I'm coming from it from the perspective of an individual investor who is putting their money into a managed fund, are they then thinking about how the fund is investing the money, or are they assessing like in terms of advocacy further on company boards and stuff? Or are they assessing the fund for what it is?
It's hard to say. So I guess, on behalf of our clients, a lot of our clients are those super funds and those insurance companies or some of those banks. And so therefore, I guess there have been certain instances where our clients have come to us and said, here is a list of things that, we're advocating for, or here's certain issues that we're really wary of. Can you be, across these issues when it comes to participating in these shareholder meetings, or, participating in these voting activities? I guess from our standpoint, we will always advocate for, what our clients really want.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, essentially, as I mentioned, we're acting as their voice on their behalf. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so as individual investors, given that there is no standard definition of what is ethical or what is um, no measure of ESG standards either, what questions should a young investor, especially a first-time investor, ask themselves if they have this concern that I want to invest, but I don't want to invest in unethical, what they consider unethical practices or unsustainable practices for the planet? What are some of the questions they should be asking themselves?
I guess it all comes down to what your investors believe in and what they really want to advocate for, and what they, what really aligns with their values, I guess. So, I think it's getting that defined in their own heads first, making sure that, they know, investors, you want to focus on renewable energy, say, and you don't want your super fund to invest in fossil fuels. So I think it's important to get your own values and your own definitions on what you believe is ethical and unethical from an investment standpoint first. But then when it comes to how you approach ethical investing from an investment standpoint, I guess there's really a lot of questions that you can ask your own. So, for example, when it comes to your retirement savings, you want your retirement savings are going to be going to a super fund. You have the power to choose, who manages your retirement savings. So you do have the power to ask them what they invest in. Are they investing in fossil fuels, say, or what are they doing for climate change? You have that power, and if you don't like what they say, you can, I guess, advocate for them to improve their practices, or, I guess, find something else which is more in line with your values. Another way you could look at it is, your bank. You do have you do have the power also to ask questions. Banks are essentially in the business of lending money. Where are they putting their money? Where are they lending that money? Is it towards renewable electricity, or is it towards those fossil fuels? So, you also have that power to ask those questions about, where your money's going to, and where they're lending their money.
Right. Okay. So the first thing you would do is define for yourself what you consider is ethical or sustainable,
Yep.
or whatever you want to define it as, what your values are, and then try to match where you're investing to your values. Because at the end of the day, everyone is defining it differently, and therefore that you can't just I guess there's no off-the-shelf solution for
No.
young investors. Yeah.
No, there's really not, but there are a lot of resources out there. So one thing that I've found helpful when it comes to, getting my head around the kind of products that are out there, and what, what's out there for investors collectively, whether it's, your bank, or, your super fund. The Responsible Investment Association of Australasia, they actually have a really good resource online, responsiblereturns.com.au, and it's a really good resource to, it helps you define what you want to focus on, and then it essentially, spits out, various products and companies who fit your criteria that you can then do your own research into, and look into further.
Okay, just double checking. That's responsiblereturns.com.au.
Yeah,
Yes, Ella?
correct.
Okay, all right. What are some that, thank you for sharing that. What are some other resources that a first-time investor curious about how they can invest according to their values look at?
So that one's a good one. I guess I guess really, if you're unsure where to start, there are actually financial advisors out there who are tilted towards helping you invest more ethically, or even yeah, asking financial advisors, outlining to them what you believe in, what your values are, where you believe your money should be invested, and they tend to have a good grasp of the market, and they'd be able to present some financial products for you.
Okay, so that was in terms of putting our money into a fund. Now, what if we are wanting, we have a young investor, first time investor wanting to buy stocks in companies or invest through ETFs or indices, which a lot of young investors do because they're starting small, and ETFs, for example, are very accessible for young investors. Are there some like global standard ones that we can look at?
There are plenty of, I guess, what's designated ethical and sustainable ETFs available on the Australian indices that you can invest directly into. In terms of those, if there's like a standardized ESG rating that's out there, I guess it's hard to say because there are so many, there are a couple of different companies out there, and each of them measure different metrics and therefore produce different sustainability ratings against different funds. So it's important to do your own research to find out, I guess those funds that you're looking into, try to find out what's behind it, and find out extra information as to what they're promising they're going to do, and that's where Responsible Returns is actually a really good resource for that.
Fantastic. And we also go through it in the MoneyGirl investment workshop. We teach actually how to look into what is in an index and where the money is going. And if you're in the MoneyGirl group, you'll see a couple of examples of people having done that. So you can, people share resources there. So there's a very good spreadsheet that one of our alumnus did of actually breaking down all the big ethical ETFs in Australia, and a breakdown of what they were or were not investing in, how, like what their screening criteria was and stuff. So if you're in the MoneyGirl group and you're interested, you can have, if you look at under the investing topic, you'll see that Excel sheet. Okay, so welcome, Talika, just joining in. If you have any questions, please type out into the chat. I'm monitoring that. Otherwise, I'm gonna start wrapping up with Ella. Okay, so there's, Ella, you were saying there's no standard there's no standard of definition of what is ethical or sustainable, right? But what is the future of ethical investing looking like?
That's really hard to say, because I guess ethical investing and sustainable investing has just been a massive tidal wave, particularly in the last few years. A lot of people are becoming more aware about, where they want their capital to go, or where they want their retirement savings invested. And I think ethical investing and sustainable investing is going to become, even more and more important. I mean, we've seen what's happening in the Australian industry at the moment, where super funds are getting a lot of pressure from their investors as to, where they are investing retirement savings. We've seen one super fund being taken to court for not doing enough for climate change. We've also seen, in the news just recently, that some of the other big super funds are actually going to divest from thermal coal and fossil fuels by a set date, or become net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So I think it's becoming, it's certainly become much more mainstream, and I think we're going to see, more and more of the industry head that way, and to ensure that, sustainability, and I guess by the same token, ethical investing is much more at the forefront of what we do and across, everything that we do, really.
Yeah. Okay. So that's definitely a good trend as a young person. I mean, I do want to put my money where my mouth is. I do want to invest in a better future for myself and the generations to come. So as individual investors, then looking forward, if we want to continue advocating with our money for more sustainable practices in companies, how do we go about practicing our advocacy power?
Oh,
Is it through funds? Like I'm trying to break down basically for the individual people watching this who are like, I don't know how to tackle this mammoth of a problem in this mammoth of a system that I don't really understand, right?
Yep.
So when I am putting my money into a fund, like a super fund or a bank or an ETF, like, and I'm a young person who has a 50, 60, 70-year investing timeline, how do I use that time and the capital I will make in that time to advocate for the world that I want to see?
Oh, I think it's just coming down to making the right choices, and really understanding, where you are putting your money and how you want them to invest that money subsequently. I think it just comes down to taking real interest in what certain companies are doing. Essentially, what we see is, companies who aren't instilling best practice when it comes to ESG, or there are heightened risks when it comes to certain activities that they're participating in. They might not be there in the future, and they're not going to generate those sustainable returns. And if they're not generating sustainable returns and we're investing in them on your behalf, then that's certainly not the outcome that we want. So I think it's really doing your research, really understanding, what your super fund is doing, really understanding, how your bank is lending money, doing a bit of extra research into some of the funds that are out there that you can access on an ETF if you're certainly motivated enough. It's just having a clear view on what your money is doing, and those products and those funds that are investing it on your behalf, are they doing what they've promised, essentially?
And does that make a difference, Ella? You've been in this industry for a while. When we as clients, when we demand things, when we demand a better standard of sustainable practices, or does that actually make a difference when people make a hoo-ha? Does it translate into something?
I think so, because we have a say as to where your capital goes, essentially. So it really does start to make a difference. And I mentioned what we're seeing in the industry. Members are putting pressure on their super funds as to how they manage their retirement savings. Are they doing enough for climate change, for example? Why is the super fund still investing in fossil fuels? Things like that. It may be a little bit slowly at the moment, but it's certainly gathering pace, and it's certainly becoming much more important. And I think it will start to make much more of a difference.
I love it. I love it. I wanted to end on that very hopeful note, because as young people who are constantly crying about climate change, we do get a lot of, they're idealists who don't know how to manage returns versus future for the planet. But it makes a difference.
It
The
does.
noise we create does make a difference, slowly but
Yeah.
surely.
Yes, it does.
And that's the direction we're going in. Okay, I have not received any more questions, people. If there are any, quickly type them out, because it is time for me to let Ella go in a couple of minutes so she can go take care of herself and have dinner, because self-care first and changing the world second. Ella, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with us. I really, really loved it. I do love that as an industry insider, you're kind of leaving us with a little bit of hope.
Yes.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And looks like that's it. So I'm going to let everyone go now. Thank you so much, Ella.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. I will see you in the next Money Girl Live.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.